Trail and ultra runners, what is going on? What's happening? Welcome to another episode of the Koopcast. As always, I'm your host, Coach Jason Koop, and on this episode of the podcast, I wanted to put the spotlight on one of our amazing everyday runners, the runners that we have the great privilege of working with each and every day that might not make the cover of Ultra Running magazine, yet provide incredible inspiration to me and to our coaches. This episode of the podcast features Michael Koppy and his coach, Stephanie Howe. In June of 2020, Michael set a then FKT on the 310-mile Superior hiking trail in northern Minnesota. It's a trail that he had tried at and failed before, and at the age of 69, decided to take another crack at. We discuss his training and nutrition and how he worked with Coach Stephanie to be prepared for this attempt, the hallucinations that he had while out on the trails, and what went wrong during the course of the attempt, as things of this nature inevitably have at least one failure point. Michael is somebody that I find inspiration from, and I hope you do too, regardless of your age or where you are in the pack. All right, I'm going to get right out of the way. Let's get into it right now. Here's my conversation with the incredible and the ageless Michael Koppy and his coach, Stephanie Howe. First off, how do you feel?
Oh, I'm great. Partly, I'm certainly recovered from everything. And one of the nice things was, as you probably heard, there was some controversy with my course route that I took. And so it's nice to have that behind me now.
Did you get, so let's set the stage a little bit. How many weeks are you out from doing the Superior hiking trail?
Let's see, what is it now? It's got to be 2 weeks.
2 weeks.
Yeah.
So 2 weeks is kind of like
Does that sound about right, Stephanie?
I think you're a little further out than that. I
3?
think you're closer to 3.5. Yeah.
Oh, 3.5.
Because it's
okay.
July. It's the second week in July now.
Oh, yes. Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Time goes by fast.
Ultra running amnesia takes its case, regardless whether it's a one-day race or a multi-day race or whatever it is. So You're a few weeks out. Let's just put it that you're a few weeks out. Super big effort. We're going to go over how big that effort was, but how's the body holding up?
Oh, it's good. Stephanie's got me back doing long runs again. So, it feels good to get back.
I'm just going to comment. Michael has an incredibly resilient body and has recovered faster than most humans I have ever worked with.
Is the recovery any different than it is during a normal, big ultra or anything like that? Or do you think that it's relatively the same?
Well, for me, the physical recovery from just the miles was not that hard. It was the sleep deprivation, which was definitely the hardest part. Okay. And that took, at least a week and a half.
So let's set this up a little bit, because a lot of people want to know about the sleep monsters. How long is the Superior hiking trail? How long did it take for you to do it?
Okay, so it's 310 miles, and it took me 5 days, 3 hours and 44 minutes.
Oh man, that's a lot of running. And this wasn't something that was planned out at the beginning of the year, I take it.
It actually was, because
it was.
I attempted it. Yes, I tried it last year, and about the same time, and ended up at 136 miles with a stress fracture. And so I knew I wanted to go back this year and try it again. And so this was in my bucket list to do.
And how long has it been in your bucket list?
Maybe, 2-3 years, I suppose.
Okay, so you've had it on your radar for a while. What initially put it on your radar?
Well, just living here. I live right next to it, and I train on it all the time. And actually, probably maybe 7-8 years ago, I had a goal of running the whole thing, but over a 2-year period. So I would go out and try a section And usually I ended up having to do it twice because I would park my vehicle, run out, and then have to run back. Some of them I got picked up and dropped off, but I did end up doing the whole thing over a 2-year period. So, and then after doing that, then the wheels started turning. Well, what if I could do the whole thing? And at that time, it wasn't finished. It only got completely finished. It was, before at that time, it was like 250 or 60 miles. It wasn't completed down at the southern end. And then I started, as they were completing that southern end, that started interest me because I went there and ran it, like in its first stages when they were just sort of grubbing out the trail and it wasn't even hardly marked. And there was no precise finish point. I only knew approximately where the end was. And then as I saw that develop, then that, and I felt like, okay, now the trail is really done. Then it interests me more to go ahead and try this.
And when you were scouting it out, regardless of what stage like the trail was like roughed in, did they plan on extending it even more? Or they said, listen, this is the continuous length of trail. It's going to be here to here. It's always going to be here to here. And once we're done, we're done.
Yeah, they had the boundaries, which was the, Canadian border and the Wisconsin borders. So that was the end of it. The only thing with this trail, it's never really done because they have various things that happen. Like the one thing that was sort of whether I was doing the right course or not was because there was a bridge out. And now the board has decided not to rebuild that bridge. And so they have a new route going around over the stream. And of course, I know a year ago they had a problem with a lot of this goes over private property as well. And they had a dispute with a private landowner and had to reroute the course. And so I don't think this course is ever done. It's always going to be moving, a little bit here and a little bit there. But basically the northern and southern borders now are set. And so the in-between is going to always be moved some way.
So you have this trail that you're familiar with. You've been out on it for years at various stages of its whole development. Did you ever have a sense of how long it would take you end to end? Like how did that start to manifest, like in your mind, starting to do the math of, okay, if I did this section in this time and this section in this time, it's going to take me 5 or 6 days.
Right. Well, I did look at the past FKT holder, and he had done it in 6 days and 8.5 hours. And so I kind of looked at that and looked at, how I knew the trail went and kind of figured how many hours it might take me. And, and if everything went, super, I could maybe do it in this kind of time and kind of knowing my own pace and stuff. So that, I did have a spreadsheet when I went there and, had an idea of what I was hoping I could do my spreadsheet was overly optimistic for sure. But I thought, I might as well try for the best I can get and then just have to go to plan B as it goes.
So it was over optimistic in what way? Like how fast do you think you could go?
Right. Because my spreadsheet actually showed me finishing it in like 9 minutes under 4 days. And so, you could say 4 days. Well, that would have been really ideal and everything went fine. I didn't miss any trails or do any extra. I did do some extra this time, and you always kind of do. And just, everything falling together 100%. That was ideal, but weather and all those things. So, I did have I was fortunate and a lot of things did fall together very well, but there were a few things that didn't. So
we're going to talk about those in a second. But before we get to the trip itself, I want to bring Steph into the mix here. Steph, when did Michael approach you about getting ready for this endeavor?
Yeah, so I think the first time we talked was just after the new year. So maybe January, he contacted me, and partly because we have the connection. I'm also from Minnesota, and I grew up hiking the Superior Hiking Trail. So we had a conversation about his goals, and this was pre-COVID, and there was a very a good choice this year to have a FKT project rather than a race goal. So we started early in the year and really just kind of outlined what it would look like working into June to prepare him for this trail. And it was a little tricky just because Minnesota there's winter, there's a lot of snow. And so he wasn't able to get onto the trail until pretty far into the spring. But we started with the training, back in January.
And when Michael put together the spreadsheet that he's alluded to, is this something that you two collaboratively did? Or is Mike just like, this is what I want to do, you got to get me ready for it?
So he shared that with me a couple months before the start, and it was really well laid out in terms of the aid state, or I guess the points where he could see crew and his pace. So it was, I had some feedback, but his initial plan was really realistic based on his training that he had done and pace he was able to cover, and then some of his experience in running the 200-mile races. And so we talked about it a bit, but, like he said, it was best case scenario. And, over 5 days, a lot can go wrong and a lot of variables get thrown your way. So I think it was still a pretty successful, close to plan, what he actually was able to execute.
I love the fact that close to plan in this scenario is a whole day. The plus or minus there is pretty much 24 hours worth of being out there. Yes. So Michael, take us through this. You've alluded to the fact that things went awry at some point, as they do with any FKT. This is like the summer, COVID summer of FKTs and personal projects and things like that, which is the theme of this podcast. And something that has come up kind of time and time again is the best laid plans don't always go to plan. So take us through what you experienced day by day, and where were some of those times where you got lost or you had something really challenging happen, things like that.
Yeah. So, the first day went pretty well. We got a little rain on and it made things a little slippery. We had to slow down because of that. There's a lot of boardwalks and sort of bridges that you have to cross, and the wood, when it gets wet, gets really slippery. And the last thing I wanted to do was fall, so I was really cautious in the beginning, especially. And so we slowed down the pace considerably, even the first day, because everything was wet. It was a real light drizzle, so it wasn't really much rain to deal with in terms of mud, but it definitely made things slippery. So, so that slowing down, I don't know how many hours it added on, but it definitely added a few hours on, and we were a little behind on the first day's schedule. I don't remember how much, but I know we were behind after the 24-hour period, and then the second day, I know we had probably the Lookout Mountain, which is probably the most challenging section, I think, of the whole trail. And we did that during the night, which makes it even more challenging. It's one of the nearest highest points and very rugged. And I was so wiped after doing that. And it was kind of a funny conversation with the pacer that had taken me through that. And that was, I believe, like a 10-mile section from crew to crew. And then, I sat down with the crew there and ate a little something, and I felt like totally wiped. And then he says, well, now we got to get up and do a 12-mile section. And I just thought, man, how am I going to keep doing this? And so I was a lot more wiped than I thought I would be. And I had last year, I had made it. That's about the point I had dropped out last year from the injury that I had. So it was really it was nice to get past that point that where I had dropped out. And so,
did you do any celebrating when you passed that point?
well, just internally, just, it was kind of like a relief, as like a, it was kind of a demon that I just needed to get past, and I kind of, I felt confident that I would anyway, but just that reality that I was now running on ground that I hadn't covered last year was really nice feeling. But I was really wiped, and that was a hard night to finish. And then after that last 12-mile section, I took a 1 hour sleep and felt much better after that. I woke up and was more energized. But going into that night was a real tough night.
And where were you sleeping during this time? Let's start to paint the picture of like who your support crew was as well, because I think this is also an interesting facet of it.
Sure. Well, I had a total of about 15 people that were going to be coming and going, at different, we had a schedule laid out and they would jump in at different points. And then of course, as that schedule changed, their points of jumping in had to change. But we had two people that had been at the, with me the previous year. So they were pretty, knowledgeable what had to happen. And so they were sort of the crew chief for the first half and the second half. And we had them split up. And both of them happened to have a Subaru Outback. And that was my sleep station.
Such a good car.
Yes. And it was great for sleeping. It was like the Taj Mahal. So
of
course I was very tired when I got to it, and I actually took from one of your podcasts, Jason, where you talked about doing the race you had done in Europe. And I remember you had talked about you could get through the whole first day and night without any sleep. And so that was my goal here too, was not to sleep anything the first day and night. And then to start my sleep, which was going to be, my goal was then an hour at night and an hour in the morning each day.
Oh, so you're breaking it up. You had like 2 1-hour naps in a 24-hour period past the first day.
Right, exactly. Wow. Except for the first day.
So how did you feel that worked out for you?
Well, it was fine for the first 3.5 days, but after that, it wasn't enough. And I didn't know that, and that really put me in the hole. And I think it's a little bit like getting dehydrated. Once you get in the hole, it's really hard to get out of it. And that really slowed me down a lot at the end. And it made it so I was taking all these 15-minute naps on the trails, and they just weren't doing it. It would help me for, maybe a half hour, but then I would be out of it again. So
yeah, the sleep aspect on these things, on these like long distance hikes and 200-mile races and things like that it's proven to be quite fascinating, because nobody really knows a good answer, and it's so individual. Like some people can go 50, 60 hours without sleep, and then other people use a 2-hour schedule pretty well. And then other people, they need, 1 hour, 1 hour is all they can stay asleep. And other people take like little short naps and like literally just kind of like curl up on their pack for 15 minutes. And throughout all my years of trying to study that, I really haven't found anything really consistent that we can kind of stick with. So you're doing an hour twice a day for the first few days. And then at the end, it seems like it was a lot of sleepwalking and taking trail naps and things like that.
Yes.
Did you have a pacer the whole time?
I did.
Okay. So they were monitoring your sleep habits. Do you have a lot of good pictures of you like curled up on the side of the trail? That's what pacers like to do when they're all fresh and rested. They take embarrassing pictures of you for blackmail.
Right. And a lot of them said that, if this was a boxing match and they had a towel they could throw in, they would have thrown it in quite a few times, because they said I looked so bad.
Really?
But I just kept going. I wouldn't stop. And, they would say, you need to take more sleep. And I would that was my schedule. So I didn't. And
so you had your crew kind of being soft on you, is what you were saying.
Yeah, I mean, they kind of told me that I looked bad and I needed more sleep, but I didn't want to take the time, I didn't want to take another hour of sleeping. But in hindsight, I think it probably would have been good to get a little more. But the problem is I should have done it way sooner after the 3 days. I was good up to the 3.5 days, and then it was really hitting me.
Steph, did y'all talk about this in advance and try to work out some schedule?
Yeah, and it's hard to predict because, you have an idea of what's going to happen over 2 or 3 days, but then going into that uncharted territory of day 4, day 5, it's how much does the sleep deprivation catch up with you? And we kind of talked about, okay, so a goal is, this time and this schedule, but the ultimate goal for this whole project is to finish the trail. So whatever it's going to take, if you need more sleep, finishing is better than, to not finishing. So we did talk about, playing it by ear a little bit as you get into day 4, because there's not many people who have done runs that long without, planned overnight. So, we just didn't really know what to expect for his sleep needs.
How technical is it?
Oh, it's technical. People don't realize that.
Stephanie comes in right there. You've been in Europe, so just to you've been in Europe, you've seen some super technical trails. You think this is really technical?
It's technical in a different way. It's rooty and rocky. There's not smooth. You have to be aware. And so that was a concern I had later, when he's sleep deprived, picking up his feet and being aware of what's underneath. That's you can't just disconnect and shuffle along like you can a lot of trails out west.
Yeah. And that was one thing that, I think maybe I underestimated too, was the mental energy it took to concentrate, because every step you take there, you had to know where that step was going. There, like Stephanie just said, there's no shuffling, because if you do, you're going to go down. And the course is so rugged with rocks, roots, and mud. It's always one of those three. And then you've got, the whole trail. We ended up doing about 70,000 feet of vertical in that 310 miles. And you kind of don't even associate that kind of elevation with Midwest trails. You would think that's more like out west.
Yeah, that's a lot.
It's more just rolly. It sneaks up on you. You're never running flat. It's just undulation. Right. So it's hard to get into a rhythm.
So all the technical trail, sleep deprivation is ripe for having a yard sale. Did you ever just totally eat it, Michael, while you're out there?
Well, I told there was one point, I think it was after 2.5 days, I could see that I was way behind my schedule, and I was really concerned that I was keeping my crew out much longer than I told them I was going to be. I thought it would be a 4-day thing for them, and and now we're looking at 5 days and maybe 5 days plus, or who knows, what it was going to end up being. And so my concern was, are you guys willing to stick this out? I really can't tell you when this is going to be over. And they reassured me that they were in it for the end. And so that helped. And I kind of forgot about what time I was going to finish then, and quit looking at my chart, and just kept putting one foot in front of the other. And, and that's how I had to get through it. But
it sounds, just from hearing you describe it, that you're really pushing yourself. You're kind of on the rivet for the last 2 or 3 days of this thing in a number of different areas. Physically, sleep deprivation wise, it just sounds like you're really going for it.
Oh, I was. I've done 3 before doing this. I had done 3 200-mile plus races, so I kind of knew what to expect, going in here, I thought. But I had never hallucinated before in those, and I heard people talking about it. It sounded kind of neat to me, I thought, well, this would be fun. But when I would get tired in those races, my head would just go down to my chest, and then I would wake up and know, okay, I gotta take a nap, but here, the morning of day 4, I got my first taste of hallucinations, and if I don't get it again, I'll be real happy, because it was so weird, and I was just so tired that, and I tried to take a nap, but the mosquitoes were so bad. They were flying in my ears and buzzing, and it felt like a jet plane in my head. And, I could have probably swatted 10 at once on my face, and that didn't bother me, but it was that they were in my ears, and so I lay down on the trail with my pacer there. This was like probably 3 a.m, the 4th morning. And I just said, I can't nap here. We just got to push on. And that was a 12-mile section we were going through. And I was hallucinating everything around me, all the natural, trees and brush and, all the stuff you have in the woods. Everything turned to man-made objects. And it started, and the ground was real dry. And so it had cracks in it because it was so dry, the earth. And I felt like I was running on this open grate, and a metal grate. And, and I could tell myself this isn't real. I knew that, but yet it made it feel unsafe. And so, and I didn't know where this was going to go, so I told my pacer just to stay with me and, get me to my crew, and then I would take a nap,
What other man-made objects were appearing out of the woods at this point?
Well, I would see a leaf from a fern, and it would look like a wooden pallet.
Like just like a normal size leaf, it looked like a full-size wooden pallet?
Yeah, well, these leaves are quite big. These are giant ferns, and, they're probably 3 feet across, and they got I could see the correlation because they got this sort of open webbing that, and you could kind of see how you got there's some imagination there. And then I would see rocks, and they'd look like hubcaps but nothing was natural. It was all things, and nothing real scary, but just all man-made things. And yet I was in a woods, where there was nothing man-made, and even the ground, was this metal open grate that I was running on. But I could tell myself it wasn't real, but it didn't help because everything, my eyes said that's what it was. So
I've always thought that ultra running induced hallucinations are some part of like a deep subconscious that just comes to the forefront. But I'm having a hard time figuring out where pallets and grates and these completely benign objects were somehow, material in your past or upbringing. Do you have any theories on that?
Well, I just the only thing I can think about is that I'm a furniture builder, and I look at, and my background is sort of engineering, and so I'm kind of a object kind of guy, so I could maybe kind of see some of those things, but it was all weird. Yeah, it was very weird.
Is there any one that sticks out in particular?
No, they were just, and I just remember telling my pacer, that, hey, I'm starting to hallucinate, and it's just getting stronger and stronger. At first it was just a few things, and then pretty soon it was everything. And I just told her to, don't. Usually when we would get about a mile from the finish or from our crew, I would say, go ahead and run ahead and tell the crew I'm going to be coming. But I told her to stay with me because I said I didn't know where this was going to go, and I didn't know if I just go running off in the woods or what would happen. So, but yeah.
Yeah, you could have ended up in Michigan.
Yeah, who knows?
Steph, were you tracking Michael while he was out there?
Yeah. It was hard to put away. It was exciting, and I had not only myself, but I had my parents who live in Minnesota and all their friends tracking as well. So yeah, we were following along, and there was good updates. His crew did a great job of like posting photos and videos. So I would like see how he was looking every once in a while. And I remember it was maybe day 3 or maybe even day 4 where it was a video of you were hiking and you were just chatting away. You just like walking down with your poles, talking about your physical therapist. And I was like, yeah, he's doing, he looks pretty good for that far in.
Michael, you had set up a system where people could like text message either you or your crew and they would relay that to you. Were you getting those quite frequently while you were out on the trail?
Well, one of the problems, especially in the first day and a half, was phone connections, because if they would text, it was texting my crew, and then my crew would read those texts to me. But of course, there'd be many times they wouldn't get phone reception for 8-12 hours at a time. Or if they did, they got it really now and then. So I would get these texts, but sometimes not for like 8 hours at a time. But when I got them, then she'd have a whole list of them and she'd have to quick read them off because, I wasn't going to stay there very long, and she'd be reading off like 20 at a time. And and I couldn't hardly absorb them. I know, Stephanie, you texted me at least once, but I couldn't even absorb what was happening.
I texted you like once every 3 hours. Oh. Yeah, I was like,
to profess to the cell phone.
On it.
Yeah.
I sent you a couple as well, but I can imagine. I've always wondered, because I know a lot of athletes like set something up where the outside world can communicate with them while they're doing whatever project. And sometimes it's this experience like you had where they just get a big, huge information dump. And then other times they kind of get it along the way and it's kind of fueling. I mean, what did you feel about that experience after it's all said and done?
Well, I mean, those texts were helpful because they were energizing. So I was glad to get them. But like you said, it was kind of a dump always. I would get 15 or 20 at once, and plus I'm half out of it, and so to absorb it was pretty tough. And to even, I mean, it was more of an overall feeling of just feeling support and people encouraging me to keep going, and that was sort of the overall feeling. But what people were actually saying and who was saying them was kind of a blur.
Well, I think it's awesome what you did. Steph clued our coaching group into what you were doing, and there was a number of us watching you along the way. What are some of the more remarkable things you took away from the whole experience?
Well, I think, probably the biggest one that I learned was that in fact, there was a guy that was going to do this trail, try for the FKT right after I did it. And he called me and we talked about, I gave him some tips. And I think the biggest thing I learned is that, I can go 3.5 days on very little sleep. But after that, I gotta start, putting in like 3, maybe even 4-hour naps in a 24-hour period. It's just not enough I can't maintain that for a long period of time. So I realized that, but I had never gone this far in time-wise. So I thought maybe I could keep that schedule on indefinitely, but I guess not.
Well, it's always
so that was the biggest one.
It's always a learning lesson. What else besides the sleep?
Well, one interesting thing was sort of the schedule that Stephanie had me doing, because the previous year I was doing back-to-back runs, and I thought, that's about all I can do is, and I am, at that time I was 68 and now I'm 69. I'll be 70 here in a month. And I thought, doing back-to-back runs was pretty good, but Stephanie had me doing back-to-back, 3 hard runs in a row. And I thought, man, I don't think I can do this, and then the other thing I did the year before was I would do like 4 weeks of hard training. I would do training blocks, and then I would take a week and sort of have an easy week and then go back at it. Well, we didn't have any easy weeks. Stephanie had me going just constant, and I never thought I was capable of doing that, but she proved me wrong that, I didn't, have any, I don't think I even came close to being injured or anything. It surprised me that I was able to do that, and in our training going up to it. And I do think especially those 3 days in a row, maybe, Stephanie, we needed to do 4 days or 5 days in a row, but I do think that helped me out there. Just that part of it's the mental part too, is just, the kind of things you have to face when you're running and you're tired and you're, not 100%, but, and just being able to run through that. But I think also the physical part, I felt like physically I was ready for this, and Stephanie prepared me really well to do this.
Steph, can you kind of give like the coaching highlights of this? Try to encapsulate what Michael's describing, like in terms of like how he actually got ready for this.
Yeah, so we changed things up quite a bit. Michael had really great endurance. It was something that, when you're not following a training plan, you just go out and run. And he was really good about just consistency, getting out every single day, 7 days a week, just doing his endurance runs. And so when we first started, it was winter, which kind of lends to less volume. So we started with some speed work because he had done some speed work, but it was a little bit, it was in the old school style of like you do 2 workouts a week, maybe on the track, and then you're doing your long run. So we really took his volume down at first, focused on getting some good speed, some good upper end fitness, and then just started to build from there. And one thing we also concentrated on or tried to concentrate on was some recovery, because he was so used to running every single day, not taking days off or rest days. And so we built in a little bit more recovery, just to let his body come down from all that hard training. And then the back-to-back days were important just because that's what this trail was going to take, for him to be out running on tired legs. And so, a lot of his training was on the roads in Duluth and in the snow. And so, the longer days, really came more in the spring to getting out in the trails, and he would go do his run and then come back and get his dog and take his dog out for like 4 extra miles. So it was really fun to put this plan together, because it's such a different type of training. But we definitely, got a lot of the upper end fitness earlier in the training plan, and then focused on volume. And Michael did incredible with this training program. He didn't really miss any days. We had enough recovery built in. Like when we got to the week before, we had a phone call and he was confident. I was confident. It was more like, okay, we just have to twiddle our thumbs until you're ready to start, because he was ready to go.
And Michael, when you were describing these back-to-back days, like how long were they?
Oh boy. And that was something that was different too, because the year prior, when I was just training myself, I was actually going longer the first day and then quite a bit shorter the other days. And here I was going like, what I think it was like 25 roughly the first day. And then maybe, was it like 15 and 10 the next day?
Yeah. And it kind of varied depending on the train. Yep. We did a lot of it on time, but that was about the mileage. So yeah, instead of doing one huge day, it was more spread out over 3 days, but ending up being more total volume.
And I take it, Stephanie, with your nutrition background, you were also doing some nutritional planning for this as well.
Oh yeah. He had everything planned, practiced everything during his long runs. He already had great nutrition habits. So we just kind of went through, okay, so what are the things you want to be using on the trail, and then really had him practice with more of the simple carbohydrates while he was training, along with some of the other more complex, but we kind of broke it out. I like to call it like tier 1, 2, and 3, just like, you would do for any planning, but he had a good plan and practiced with all of that. That is the key.
So what are in the tier 1, 2, 3 foods?
So it's kind of like, okay, so tier 1, simple carbohydrates. That's going to be the bulk of your quick energy. So things like gels, blocks, fruit, white rice, just things that are going to get into your stomach quick and be, used for energy immediately. Tier 2, a little bit more complex. That can be like bars, maybe a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, some savory options, maybe some soup with, some chicken or noodles in it. And then tier 3 is the food you're not going to have all that often, but when you're out in the trail that long, you need real food. So it is going to resemble more real food. And so that's going to be like, like what you'd think of as like a meal. And he had a lot of different options out there. And we talked about making sure he had those options if he needed them, but also being pretty clear about what do I need from my crew? So it wasn't like came into this huge smorgasbord of like, what am I going to choose?
Michael, what was your favorite food while you're out there?
Well, surprisingly, like after the 4th day, my wife had brought out pizzas for the crew. And if you had asked me beforehand, are you going to eat pizza? I would have said absolutely not. I mean, it's too much grease, and I chowed down sausage pizza. Like, I think every time I saw him, I ate like 4 or 5 pieces, and I couldn't believe it. And that was for like 4 stops in a row. So, I got a lot of calories, but man, it must have taken 2 weeks for that to digest with all the grease that's with the pizza, But for some reason, it was what I could eat, because a lot of, that's one of the problems is your appetite goes south. And this was something for some reason I wanted to eat, and I could get it down, and it stayed down. And so I'm sure there was a lot of calories in it, but it wasn't something I would have predicted.
You needed the calories.
Yeah.
Koop, wasn't that your secret weapon in the Tour de Géant?
Tour de Géant. I had my wife bring me pizza every 50K. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so you're motoring down the trail. You're eating pizza, sleeping in the back of your Subaru. 4 days go by. You're kind of in like the home stretch. What are you thinking as you're getting close to the terminus of the trail?
Well, I knew when I hit Duluth that it was pretty much a done deal, because I knew the adrenaline. I had a lot of friends that came out and just joined me for sections, so I knew I was, unless something happened, I knew I was going to be done and finish it. It was just a matter of how much I was going to break the record by at that point. And so for me, it was just keeping going and just make sure I didn't make any bad mistakes, trip on a rock and those kind of things, but
or the pallets that you were seeing out on the trail.
Yeah. Well, I only hallucinated that one time. I never had it again. So I guess I was taking enough 15-minute naps that I kept it at bay. But when I hit Duluth, I knew that, I would have a lot of friends joining me and pacing me. So that was a real adrenaline rush to have all my different friends join me at different points running through Duluth. And, I did have one night after that, which of course, then I was back by myself the last night, and then morning going into the finish, because I think I finished around 10:30 in the morning roughly. And that was, up until the very early morning. Then I had, again, that was probably the last, maybe 3 or 4 miles. Then I had a bunch of people joining me again. They wanted to run to the south terminus with me, and that was great. So we had quite a crowd there, but that was good. It was hard that last night. And, through the morning hours there, the early morning hours, we got lost twice during that time. And I know it was, I know that area so well, and it was just dumb mistakes because I was sleep deprived, just missing simple trail markers. And, they weren't bad, probably each one a half a mile extra, but it you don't feel like doing an extra half a mile even once at that time.
Especially at the very end. How long were you awake for during that last stretch? Like, what did your sleep look like for the last, little bit of this?
Yeah, the only sleep I took that last night was these 15-minute naps. And I think I did, I don't remember now for sure, 2 or 3. Because I just couldn't see, I probably needed it. Maybe in hindsight, I should have taken a good hour. It might have, helped more. But at the time, it just felt like I can't take an hour now when I'm this close and only got this much left. You just think I'll just, get through it. But man, I was tired.
Just power through it, right?
Yeah.
And so you finished. Like, what did you think right when you finished?
Well, they had set up, they had balloons over the terminus area. It's, it's out in the middle of nowhere. There's really nothing there, but they had set up this big sign and, that I had checked it off and balloons there. And of course, a bunch of people welcoming me. So I was just kind of overwhelmed with, being done with it. And I was glad it was over. So it was nice. And it was nice to have friends there, and just welcome me, and knowing that it was done now. And so then we had to hike out almost a mile because you can't drive to the end. So you got to hike out. And so we all hiked out together. They wanted me to lead. And so I hiked, we just walked out then. And then we got to where the vehicles were, and they had a chair for me, and they gave me a can of beer. But a couple sips of that, and man, that was not the thing to drink.
Well, that last mile, there's a lot of routes and FKTs and things like that that include this last little bit that is in between the end of the trail and where you can get to a car.
Yeah.
And it's always trivial when you look at it on paper. It's a mile or 2 miles out of 200 or 300 miles.
Yeah.
But when you're actually in the middle of it, and I've been with a lot of athletes that have been in the middle of it, it is a kick in the butt right when you're at your worst, because all the adrenaline has gone off and that you finished, and that mile might as well be another 100 miles.
It seemed like a fairly long way, but again, with everybody there, and we were talking, and they were telling me all the stories that I never heard because I was running, like with our truck getting stuck and all these different things that happened. And so I was just entertained the whole way out, so I wasn't really thinking about having to walk, but it was a fair walk, it seemed like.
You had a tremendous amount of support, not only from your coach, Stephanie, but also from the community that came out to come and help you out, but also from the virtual community as well, because you reached out to people, your crew reached out to people to send you all these messages during the actual event. Could you feel that? Could you sense that the totality of that community support while you were out there?
I could. And I think, that varied at times. But the other part of that too was, I was also doing this as a fundraiser for the SHT people. And I had put this challenge out on Facebook that I would match $750 or $7,500 that was donated to the SHT. I would match that first $7,500, and we ended up raising $20,275.
Wow.
And so that was really nice to see that support. And I think a lot of that was because people got so excited about all this, and and it wasn't like a one-day thing. It took these 5+ days, and so people got to follow it, and it really got them involved, and and they really got behind not only supporting me but supporting the SHT people, and And I would send messages out, via my crew to have them put it on Facebook. Like the one I said that we were in Duluth and we hadn't quite made my match at that point. And I told one of the runners, he was actually videotaping me live and streaming it right to Facebook. And I said that I'm not going to cross, I'm going to stay 10 feet from the end of the trail until the match is met. and boy, the dollars just started flying in. And so, that was really cool to see that support as well. So the community support was in a lot of ways, like you said, a lot of it was, I actually, at the end, I got a list of all the people that contributed, and I would say I only knew a quarter of them by name.
That's unbelievable.
So that was really cool.
A lot of that is you, though. I mean, you're a likable person. You're a normal person. I think people listening to this podcast are going to identify you. Like, you're very much an everyday runner.
Yeah, I think I am. I'm not a professional by any means, so probably the only unique thing is that I'm older than a lot of runners that try this. That was probably the only thing that maybe differentiated me from other people was my age, So.
I'm not going to out your age, but you're more than welcome to if you want to.
Yeah. No, I'm just saying, though, that was the one characteristic, like when the couple of TV stations came out and interviewed me, and one of the big things they pointed out was the guy that had the record was 25, and here I'm beating it by 28 and a half hours, and I'm 69, almost 70, and so it was, but for me, like I said, it's just a number, and we do what we feel we can do, and I felt like I could do this, and so why not do it? The number shouldn't make the difference,
Well, God bless you. I bet that's going to be an inspiration to a lot of runners, both in your age group and in my age group, and in age groups younger than both of us. It's certainly good. It's certainly inspiring to me, and I know a lot of people listening will be inspired by it as well. Before we let you go, where can people find more about the Superior Hiking Trail?
Well, just their website, I'm sure. And, if they just go to the Superior Hiking Trail, that they have a website there that'll bring them right to that. And they have a lot of different links to different aspects if you want to learn about the trail or know trail conditions. All those kinds of things are on their website. Or if you want to donate, there's certainly a link there as well. So, and like these kind of times, all the nonprofits are hurting. So this was, for me, it was, and they said that this couldn't have been better timing for them because they had lost a lot of opportunities to raise money because of what was going on. And so, that it was nice to be able to help them this way and have other people support me with that. So,
well, thanks for coming on the podcast and sharing your story. It's a great one. I thoroughly enjoyed watching you while you were doing it. Stephanie was giving us the down low the entire time while you were out there. And I appreciate you being so willing to kind of share your story with all the listeners out there.
Oh, it was my pleasure, Jason. Nice to be on here. I'm honored.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
All right, folks, and there you have it. Much thanks to Michael and Stephanie for coming on the Koopcast today. I'll tell you what, I just find so much inspiration from athletes like Michael. It's one of my life goals to continue to run and continue to push myself all the way to the ripe ages of the late 60s and early 70s. I just cannot tell you how much inspiration I get from athletes like Michael. I hope you guys did too. All of the links to some of the things that we mentioned on the podcast, including the Superior Hiking Trail, the FKT, as well as some of the fundraising that Mike did, those are all in the show notes. I encourage everybody to go and check those out. In addition to that, if you think one of our coaches like Stephanie or any of our other incredible CTS coaches is the right coach for you, you've got some big goals lined up for this summer, just like Michael did, go ahead, hit me up on social media. Go ahead and check out trainright.com. I would be more than happy to steer you in the right direction. All right, that's all for today, folks. As always, we will see you out on the trails.